Randy McDonald joins us today. Sit back and enjoy his story from when he relentlessly pursued the farmer for a job mucking out stalls as a young boy, through a $250,000 loss in business, to a successful retirement and transfer of ownership of a thriving dealership. Randy relates how we ought to see that we're blessed even when we can't see the blessing. Hi, Randy. How you doing?
Good, Aaron.
Good.
Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. Little frazzled Friday this morning, but I think we got it. I think we got it worked out. So appreciate your time.
No worries.
So, Randy, did you prepared a little devotion for us this morning?
I was thinking of a little something as you were mentioning that we are going to get together, and that because it's kind of a business venue, it came across to me that, I thought, I've talked to a lot of people, and it's interesting to say, I'm blessed. And I think, and I'm not sure, but I think there's a connotation that to be blessed means that, if I'm in business, I'm making a lot of money and a lot of customers are coming and things are going really good and there's just no problems in my life. Well, as a Christian, I thought, do you ever say I'm blessed when things aren't going well? Because God has a way of working things out in his plan that might be different than our plan, and we can be being blessed by hard times. Peter talks about that. But I happen to think of King David when he was first starting out and he was running from Saul because he wanted to honor God and he didn't want to go against God's chosen one. And so it talks about how he went to the extreme of making friends with Achish, a king of the Philistines. And this king gave him a town, Ziklag. Said, here you go, you can take your band of worthless fellows in 400 and go hang out there and you can stay away from Saul and it'll all be good.
I got you.
Yeah, so David does this, and then he's hanging out with them, and then they're going to go to war. The Philistine kings are going to go to war. And the guys were worried about David. Achish's buddies said, hey, these other kings, we don't want David to come along. He could turn on us. I mean, it could not be good. And, he's not a Philistine. And so we don't want him to come along. So Achish goes to David, says, hey, David, the boys don't want you to come along. They're a little afraid of what you might do. So go home. Go home to the town that I gave you. Well, David says, I've been faithful and tried. Yeah, I know you have. But, they're not comfortable with it. So go home. So David says, okay. He whips up his guys, and now it's grown a little bit over years. And he's got about 600 guys, and he heads home. Well, he gets close to home. Ziklag is the town, and he looks in the distance. And it doesn't look right, but he gets closer, and then he gets closer, and he comes and finds that the Amalekites had been there. Mm-hmm. And they had burnt the town, mm-hmm. and they had taken all the ladies, they had taken all the kids, they had taken all the stuff. David had been blessed and blessed and blessed and blessed. We hear that. God had shown favor to David over and over and over. And it's not that David had done anything wrong that we're aware of or that anything had changed, but for some reason, God had chosen to bless David in this way. Now, it was an interesting thing because if I were David, it's that would probably raise my blood pressure. And I would probably be out for vengeance.
Right.
And want to get things squared away.
Right.
Upon seeing that, David, it says all the guys wept. I mean, everything's gone. Mm-hmm. And it was not a good situation because David, being the leader, he talks about even his guys wanted to stone him. And sometimes in leadership and sometimes in business, things aren't going to go well.
No.
And you're going to feel like everybody's against me. And even God. Mm-hmm. Because why would he allow this?
Right.
Well, David did something that I think is very wise, and he went before the Lord. He said, what do you want me to do, Lord? And that's exactly, I think, the blessing that God was giving David, was to continue to grow him and strengthen him. And David proved to be of right mind and went to God and said, what do you want me to do? He says, go get your women and children and stuff back.
Go get your family.
Go get your family.
Right.
And so David does, and he's successful. Mm-hmm. And that was a hard one because it wasn't just all about David. the Amalekites were something that God had said, I'm going to take you out because of what they did to the people of Israel when they come out of Egypt and they crossed the Red Sea. It talks about how they had come up behind these really slaves that didn't know anything. They weren't trained for battle. They hardly had, left with anything, that the only thing that they could put in their carts and that type of thing. And the Amalekites came up behind them and started slaughtering women and children and everything. And God said, your day is coming, and we're going to make that right. David was part of that fulfillment because Saul,
he let him go.
The first king, he let him go.
What is this lowing of cattle?
Yep. That's what Samuel said to him.
Right.
Like, dead sheep don't bleat,
Dead sheep don't bleat.
Yeah. So David got that handled. A few guys got away on camels. If times get really tight, buy a camel. They can go fast, 40 mile an hour, and they can go a long time without water. So I think they're a good thing to have around. A few of them got away, but Simeon's family finished that up in 2 Chronicles and took out the rest of them. So God fulfills his word. We don't know what he's up to.
Right.
Being blessed may not always be because we have abundance.
Right. It may be that the blessing is that growth. So no, yeah, I think that's great. And in today's culture, I think, even though we say on the face as Christians in business, we say, well, because that's a pretty normal concept for guys, Christians in business. We've talked to a lot of guys on the podcast who are kind of in that situation where they're, hey, it's not necessarily all about the dollars and the world's view of success. And we can say that, but that doesn't necessarily, sometimes that line gets a little gray in our hearts. And I think it's a good reminder to see, that God, that sometimes that blessing is growth and sometimes growth is hard. So yeah. Well, Randy, you and I have known each other for quite a while here, and you've been a blessing in my life in several different ways, even from a place to live. So, but long before I knew you, your story kind of started when you were real young, came from a big family, right? And so I want to hear kind of your story from that family and on through life in business. But first I want to touch on your personal testimony. Tell us how you came to know Christ and how that affected your life and how he moved in your life.
Sure. As you said, a fairly large family, have 8 total in the immediate family and then 2 half-brothers. And father left when I was 8 years old, and so that was tough on a single mom. We were children that were raised under the welfare program. And so at one point in our life, we lived on Main Street there. A couple guys stopped by and said, hey, we're from the Baptist church, and we'd like to take your kids to come and play Wednesday night, play some games. And what do you think, Mrs. McDonald? And it's like, well, sure. That'd be a wonderful thing. We'll come by and pick them up, and we'll bring them home. And so that was great. So off we went to the WANA program, and I can't tell you the day, and I can't tell you even who the speaker was or anything of that nature. But at 9 years old, I remember whatever happened, it was like, well, this Jesus they're talking about, I'd like to know him. I want to get to know him. I don't know much. I'm just a snotty-nosed little kid at 9 years old who likes to play games and eat treats. But like this guy they're talking about, like he sounds like he would be worth knowing in life. And so I gave my heart to Christ. I asked Jesus, I said, Jesus, would you be part of my life? Would you come into my heart? And it was an amazing thing because I'll never forget it. And the change of heart. And as I went back home and told my mother, nothing else changed. It didn't change my home, didn't change my setting, didn't change the dysfunction, didn't change even a lot of the thought process, but my heart was different. And I talk about 11 years of, everybody has a different incubation period, and 11 years of desires with no boundaries and living in that environment. But God continually pursued me, placing people in my path, putting me in right situations. I developed a hunger for his word. I wanted to know who he was. So I'd read a little bit, and I'd show up to church occasionally on the bus, And I remember specifically later on in life, early teens, I would go to church occasionally. they'd pass this thing called communion. Pastor Mead would talk about that, like, well, you got to examine yourself and see where you're at in life and how your heart is and how you are with your brothers and sisters in Christ. And, if you're not at peace with that, I'd recommend that you don't participate in that communion. Yeah, I wouldn't even touch that plate. When it come by, I'd let that thing go, man. Nope, not touching that thing. Lightning's going to come. It's all going to be over. So, God is just a wonderful God.
We could use a little more, I think, communion talk like that. I think in the American church, I think sometimes it gets so routine. We do it so often, it can become so routine. So I don't think it would hurt for us to have a little more of that type of concept of, no, this is special and it's for a special people and it's, yeah. So anyway, so at that time you were kind of like, just kind of not that incubation period. You're still in that incubation period. And so, kind of break that down as far as continuing beyond that point. What kinds of things happened?
Well, I think the major thing for me, and for whatever reason, 11 years later, still occasionally going to that church, having great people invested in my life that were great godly examples of men, and some not godly, but just good men. Like, okay, I didn't have a father, so how do you learn how to be a father if you don't have a father? And not that I was seeking to be a father at that point, but to at least be a man.
Right.
And maybe even a man that some woman would want, right?
Sure.
For the future. So, like, how do I be a good man? And God had put some wonderful people in my life to be able to display that. And I continued to be in His Word, and He kept continually working on me, developing me, maybe through hard times of disciplining me.
Right.
And so anyways, I said, you know what? They talk about this baptism thing and how that if you want to make a statement and in yourself, in your own heart, but also to others that you want to live for Jesus, that's a good thing to do. And Jesus says that too, be baptized. And not that it's a salvation issue, but it's a good thing to do. Mm-hmm. If you confess me before men, I'll confess you before my Father in heaven, Christ tells us. So I thought, well, I want to get wet. And
right.
I was not married. I was a young man, but I wanted to do that. And so I did. And I think that was really a life-changing experience for me when I got baptized and made that public profession in front of the church. It's like, okay, now I've made a statement. I've said to people who I am and who I want to be. And now I have some responsibility to own up to that. Not because I want to look good, but because I don't want Christ to look bad.
That's heavy. Let's just sit with that for a second. Not because I want to look good, but because I don't want Christ to look bad. That's heaviness. So you got baptized.
And I was dating a wonderful girl. She was a couple years younger. I teased that, I had to date a younger girl because all the girls my age and grade wouldn't date me. So they knew me. So anyways, I fell in love with her. So we were dating. And then as she saw that progression of my faith, because she was a Christian, we moved forward in that and set up to get married.
Do you think that relationship with Beth had influence on your growth, on your Christian growth?
Not initially.
Not initially.
Not initially. No, not initially. I don't know if we were dating that much or a little bit, but definitely later on in life. I mean, I married.
A solid woman.
Oh man,
she's something else. She is solid. Yeah. I think that I wouldn't say that my wife has necessarily grown me in my faith, more that my wife has grown in such a way and has an air of expectation that I grow. There's kind of, it's almost like there's a bar. Like there's a bar that is set there that's understood. Now she's not some tyrant expecting you need to grow in your faith, but it's like I want to because God has entrusted me with a family. God's entrusted me with a wife, and a godly wife. And I got a responsibility. I got to step up. And the only way I can step up is by closeness to Christ. And so I think that it's not like she directly, it's not like she directly, contributes to my growth, but her presence is a catalyst. Her presence and her walk, etc., is a catalyst and an understanding of a responsibility to grow. If she's going to grow, I definitely have to grow. And so in I think a lot of my, spiritual leadership in the home has been influenced by that. Early on in our marriage years, I wasn't leading. And there was this expectation that I would, that wasn't necessarily communicated. It was just felt. And so that encouraged me to grow just because of the weight of that responsibility. So,
well, that's not uncommon. I mean, if you get married, if you're like most, or at least in rural Fremont, America, you go to work. That's what I did. I went to work. And so I worked hard, man. And then we had a kid, and I didn't have insurance. And so I'm making payments on this first kid. And that was so much fun. I asked Beth if we could do it again, and she agreed. And, we had another kid, and now I'm making payments on 2 kids. And wait a minute, so I'm going to work early, and I'm working hard and doing other things. And the spiritual leadership, I don't think that's uncommon in families. That's a challenge for the man to be the spiritual leader. We can be frank about that, and it's because of a time element. And so women can tend to be, godly women can tend to be a driving force in that arena. I don't know if that's so bad, because the two becoming one, that's what we do.
Right.
It's no pressure. Honey, I'll go to work. And if you want to stay home and raise these kids, for us, I would love that, because that's a whole lot harder job than going to work.
Right.
Whole lot harder job. I mean, you ever think of that? Go to the grocery store and watch the mom that has 4 kids trying to get groceries, and it's not easy. It's
No,
I've seen that once, and I see a lady, and it's got a kid in the cart just screaming and going around, and she's saying, "It's okay, Susie. We'll be out of here soon, Susie. We'll be done with the list pretty soon." The way she goes, she gets up to the register, and the clerk goes, "Man, you are impressive. You are something. The patience and everything you have. I mean, that's quite something." She says, "Lady, you don't get it. I'm Susie." Sometimes you got to talk yourself off the cliff, right? Your own. It's so this whole spiritual leadership thing, and I didn't feel pressured with Beth. And Scripture is very clear that as the two become one, it's very clear that the better your wife looks, good job, Aaron. And the better you look, good job, Melissa. That's what we're here for. And who doesn't want to? If you love, I don't want to hurt my wife, and I want to encourage my wife, and I want to support my wife. So these things are what we do. It's not a have to, or you must, or you said an interesting thing early, I want to. I tend to want to do kind things to people that do kind things to me.
Right.
I just want to.
Right.
And not a have to. Too much pressure.
So
I'm about taking pressure off a little bit.
Right.
I really am.
Right.
We're fed some lies that Satan loves to deceive us and take us off track.
Right. So married, growing in your faith, really kind of stepping into the, being in spiritual leadership, and then outside, working with the church and in leadership in the church, and a lot of that kind of those skills, et cetera, in terms of leadership also took place in the business world. So let's backtrack, because I've heard bits of your story here and there from people around, and it's a really, what I've heard is very interesting. So if we want to, if you don't mind, let's step back to when you're real young, okay, raised in the welfare system, right? And so at some point you stepped out and started kind of getting some stuff going, doing some work. Talk to me about from the beginning. Walk me through.
Yeah, sure. Well, I don't think it's uncommon when you're a young kid, you have a little bit of energy. And if you don't have anything, you might figure out that if you go to work, you might get something, right? And you
Right.
got to do something anyhow. We didn't have anything to play with. So, and,
Right.
And you beat up on your brothers and sisters so long, that gets old because, so it's like, well, what am I going to do? So I go down to the neighbor and I say, can I clean your pig pens on Saturday? Yeah, you can do that. That's good. So I did that. And then summer comes along, and the guys used to pick up these square bales in the field. They'd bale them, and then guys would go pick them up. And like I was so little, I couldn't lift one of those bales. But, I could run ahead of those boys, and I could roll those bales in closer so they didn't have to walk so far. And then the old gentleman farmer sees me doing that, so he gives me $1 or something, like that's rewarding. Mm-hmm. There you go. Okay, I like that. I'm going to do that some more. And pretty soon it's, okay, this kid, he can come and he can clean pig pens. Well, then this old gentleman farmer, he passes away. Sad day. Yeah, just a great, great guy. Didn't say much, but let me do things like drive his truck down on 48th Street when I was 11 years old. I was sitting on the edge of the seat and like...
blocks tied to your feet so you can reach the gas pedals.
He thought it was safer letting me drive his truck 2 miles down on the main street than it was letting me drive the tractor. I guess, I don't know. So that was fun. But now he's gone. Now what am I going to do? Still, got a lot of energy. Didn't know what to do. Didn't think I was very smart. But what I thought was, you know what? I can outwork. I'm a skinny little thing. I can outwork guys. I'm not that I'm the strongest and biggest, but man, I can run all day, all night. And I don't need much sleep. So I'm just going to work. Wanted a job, liked farming, saw a farm down the road. Went, talked to the guy. Can I work? Can I clean out these cow stanchions where the cows come in and make a mess? Can I clean those out for you? I don't know. I'm 12 years old, I'm just a little kid. Probably wasn't 100 pounds even by then, I'm sure. And he wasn't quite sure, but he didn't tell me no. So he was only there on Saturdays. He had a foundry in Muskegon that he ran, so he would show up on Saturdays to just see how things were going. So Saturday, here was this little kid again back there. Can I? What can I do? Can I milk cows for you? Can I? I don't know. But he didn't tell me no. Off I'd go. Let me think on it, he'd say. So, next Saturday, I was back. Well, can I just? Would you let me sweep the floor, maybe? Just sweep the floor. Oh, I'm not sure about that. But let me think on it. He was such a gentleman, such a kind man. This went on 10 times.
10
times.
Saturdays in a row you are chasing down.
I don't know if it was in a row.
You are chasing down, cleaning up poop.
Well, whatever. And I show up the 10th time, and he hands me a note. He says, okay, yep, you're not going to work on the farm. You're going to work at my house, and you're going to pull weeds. And you be there Monday morning at 9 o'clock or whatever it was. And he handed me an envelope, and there was $10 in there for my persistence.
What year was this?
Oh, man. So I'm 12 years old. So now I'm 62. So 50 years ago. 50 years ago.
$10 for a 12-year-old. It's not bad.
Oh. And he was going to pay me 75 cents an hour. Yeah. So, I am pumped.
Right.
And I found out later that the biggest one of it, not that two reasons he didn't want me on the farm. One, the influence of the big boys, because, that wasn't going to be good. All these 19, 20, 21-year-olds, that he didn't think that was good for a 12-year-old boy to be around. And secondly, he was afraid that my brothers and sisters would follow me down there. So he sends me off to his house, which was just a wonderful thing, and puts me pulling weeds, and I pulled weeds, and I'm really good at pulling weeds today. I love pulling weeds.
You still do it for 75 cents an hour?
I know it's a curse, but I don't mind it. Yep. Pluck those babies out of there, just like getting the sin out of your life, right? Just plucking them out.
So where do people go to get a 75-cent an hour weed puller? How do they get a hold of you, Randy?
Yeah, right. So, I'd probably come and pull your weeds for free.
So you're pulling weeds for a while.
Pulling weeds, and just really developing a relationship with this gentleman. And then he had this farm, and it turned into the whole PBB time frame where there was issues with cattle because of fire retardant that ended up in feed. And so we had a problem. And that dissolved his dairy. But he had this, he had a lot of property, so he went into cash cropping alfalfa. And then as I got older and started, must have been probably 9th grade, 10th grade, somewhere in there, started working on this farm. And that's when 16. When was I 16? So when I turned 16, we had a sad situation where my brothers and sisters ended up going with my dad because mom was struggling. And the court found out about that, and we were on welfare, so they came and took the kids away, and they ended up going up with my dad. And I stayed here on my own. Went to some dear people who let me live in their place for a while, for 6 months while I finished up the year in school. And then I went and lived on my own, one of the homes that this guy owned, and stayed in there and worked on his farm. And then when school started, I would go to school for a half a day, and then I'd go work on the farm for a half a day. So that worked out really well. That was a good combination. Helped me get through school. Wanted to graduate. I don't know why. It's not like I like school. It's not like I opened books. Ashamed to say, I wish I would have thought differently, but I didn't. I didn't.
You wanted to finish.
Well, yeah. I think I liked the shower and the hot lunch is what I went for.
There
so
you go.
yeah, 35 cents a piece.
If I got to do a little math, well, okay.
I'm a bachelor, right? You know, yeah, that was my main meal of the day. I mean, 2 hot lunches. I loved them. Kids hated them. I loved them. Like, yeah, you don't know. This is hot food. Try cottage cheese and bologna every day. See what you think of that. $10 a week. I could live on $10 a week back then. So it was pretty good. Yeah, and the showers were nice because I didn't have running water in the home where I lived come winter. So I'd go to school and make sure I took gym class first hour.
So that you can get your shower.
Get my shower. It worked out perfect. Why not, right?
Why not?
Just perfect. So it's all good. And then
So you're working on the farm.
Working on the farm.
And then
meet this gal.
Okay.
Get baptized, get married. Kids come, making payments on kids. Like, well, this farming gig it's hard to provide for a family.
On this little farming gig.
It is. It's just hard to provide for a family.
So now what do you do?
Well, you think, what do I do? We're in Fremont, Michigan. What do you do, right?
You go work at the Gerber factory.
That's it. Well, church. Church is a good thing. I know it's full of hypocrites, but that's okay. I met some wonderful people. The first church we went to that, just love them dearly, loved me so well. And a couple guys said, "Hey, ever thought about, doing something different?" Have I ever? No,
I love working in poop all day.
Only a couple 300 times, last week.
Right. Oh, you mean like 5 minutes ago? Yeah, I think so.
So they said, well, I should share because it was a good thing, Amway was a good thing. Somewhere in that time frame before, someone came along and showed us that. And I thought, well, maybe I could do that on the side and pick up a few extra bucks. And I didn't mind selling soap. I really didn't. I like people, and it was okay. And so I did that for a little bit, learned a lot, got to rub shoulders with a great mix of different people, honed some skills as far as speaking and that type of thing. Just fantastic. So I think that's how I got the opportunity, because I was doing a presentation somewhere and these gentlemen saw me and thought, oh, maybe this young kid is, maybe he's got something here. And they had a car dealership in town. And so then they asked me, they wanted to start a finance department. Would you consider doing something different? Yeah, you bet. Let's talk. We talked. We'd like you to run a finance department for us. Okay. Well, we talked again, not a quick thing. Yeah, we're not sure the timing's right. We're talking 80s, 83, 84. Excuse me. Just coming off very high interest rates, very tough time. Okay, we talk again. Well, we don't know about that, but maybe we got a gentleman retiring, maybe about selling cars. What do you think of that? Okay, well, what's that involve? Well, we give you a car and commission. Okay, anything else? Nope.
That's it. Car and commission.
We'll let you get here, but then if you don't sell, you don't make any money. Okay, well, that's a little scary, but I don't know. Maybe it'd be okay. We talk again. 6 months. We talk.
And you're still mucking stalls.
Well, no animals, haylage. We're buying and we're chopping and baling and selling hay.
So you're
No
running
animals.
tractors.
I have animals at my house, but yeah, semis. This is, semis.
You're running trucks
big
and tractors.
choppers,
Okay,
and
sure.
stuff like that. So, but thinking like getting further behind. Wasn't making $1,000 a month.
Right.
I got 2 kids at home. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so not easy. And a brother. We had taken in a brother. So okay, so need to do something different. And we talk again. Finally, we come to the agreement. And I'm going to go sell cars. Not sure about that, but got to do something. Still making payments on these 2 kids.
Right.
Can't have another one. I don't make enough. So made the switch.
So you started
Hard
selling
thing.
cars.
Loved the gentleman dearly that gave me that opportunity for all those years and the people I worked with. But it's like, I gotta provide for this family.
So you're selling cars.
So went and sold cars. Yeah, showed up.
Were able to pay the bills.
Put on a clean shirt. Yeah.
And then once you got the bills paid, then did you move forward and move up with some management?
Yeah, it worked well. Liked people. Don't care about cars. Never liked cars. They're costly. They break. I like them to start and go.
But they've made you a couple dollars over the years, haven't they?
They did. So, don't care about cars, and I'm colorblind, so I didn't tell them that when they hired me. People say, "What color is that?" And I say, "Well, what color do you think it is?" And, I am not. This guy shouldn't be selling cars. But what else was I going to do?
So you move into...
Gerbers are selling cars. Did well, and then did that for 2 years, and then we said, okay, let's get this finance department going. They had done a little bit of it, but it wasn't successful. They were great guys. We come to an agreement. I got into that where we could help people do their financing right there, and had to make relationships with banks. Enjoyed that, setting that up, and did really well. And then one gentleman, I think that they thought they were getting older. They were 64 or so, 60s, and thought, well, maybe it's time we get rid of the store. But the market was such where maybe there wasn't a lot of interest or whatever. So
they had a couple dealerships then, right?
No, just one at that point.
Oh, they just had the one.
Yep,
Okay.
just the one. And so anyways, they tried that. And then one of the gentlemen said, I really would like to retire while I can. So they gave me the opportunity. Both of them were so kind. One said that he would sell me his shares over time, sweat equity. And the other one agreed to that, which was a big deal, right? Okay, I'll let Randy be a minority partner at this point, and over time he can earn interest and get that. So that was wonderful, and did that. Very excited, took a pay cut. Most people when they they go into business are going to be the owner. Like, I'm going to make a lot of money, right? Yeah. It's okay. I took a pay cut.
But you saw, you saw the potential.
Right, it was an investment. So that's what we did. Fantastic partnership. Business did well. Yeah. And so gentleman was just I say this, he was more to a father to me than my own father. He was just a great guy. One of his sons came in the business, had a great relationship with him, really enjoyed it. We were having a lot of fun. And then we bought another dealership.
You bought another dealership? We
bought another dealership right in the same town. And then his 2 other sons came, and they worked. One worked there, one worked at the other one with me, and the son that we were partners with went out there. And so it was going well. Yeah, all that was going well. And then the Lord provided and made opportunity where the other 2 boys could come in with dad and the one son at one dealership, and I bought out the other one.
You bought out the full
Bought out the
dealership.
other one. That wasn't a fun time for either of us, I'm sure. One of those times when you would say, well, I don't know. What are you up to, Lord? Are we blessed here? I'm not so sure. I would dare say that as we both look back now, we would say definitely that God was in it. It was a thing for us. But
it like financial difficulties with
not
people?
Financial difficulties, just because you got a few people involved and trying to do what's best.
Negotiate, right.
Yeah, and just all that. So it's just...
people.
That's a little... Yeah, people.
People
it's just
work.
Right. So, but it all worked out very well.
So now you're owning this dealership.
Right.
Kind of on your own, separated from the others.
Yep.
Obviously kind of moving forward. And then you came to a point where you were thinking, well, and I don't want to do this forever. And so you had a couple of guys that were working and kind of offered them a similar opportunity in that?
Well, I did. I had one glitch in there where I had a couple gentlemen. Well, I had a simple philosophy in business. Work yourself out of a job. That was it. That's all I did.
So you worked yourself out of a job?
Every time.
And gave...
When I was selling, I worked myself out of that, training people, and then went into finance and worked myself out of that, trained someone to take that position. And when I was a dealer, worked myself out of that, like, okay, who can do this? And so that's what I did constantly, because time is very valuable to me.
Well, especially, you had 4 daughters at this point.
We did. 2 more. Yep, we got enough money where we could pay off the first 2 kids, and we decided to have another one.
More.
And and that was fun. So we did it again and had our 4th. And
sure.
Yeah, that was awesome. 4 girls. So 4
girls.
Lovely girls. God knew that if I had a boy, I'd try to duplicate myself, and that may not be good. So
That may not be good.
So
then you had these couple guys at the dealership that you owned kind of toward the end, that you basically offered the same opportunity to them that had been offered to you through the first dealership.
I did in a way. We did it a little bit differently because I had learned a lesson. I had 2 gentlemen that had an interest in the store, and it was a little early. Both times that I got out was a little early, but I thought, and I didn't know them, but they were car guys and managers for a large dealership who had multiple dealerships, and they ran them and they had an interest. So I thought, well, maybe this is the time, Lord. I'm young, but maybe this is the time. They had the store, good car guys, worked hard, never missed a beat. We went through some tough times. We're heading into 2008, 2009.
Okay.
People know what that was like. Banks were shutting down, getting out of the car business and other things, calling loans. Put these guys in a position where they needed to make some decisions. So I went back into the store, and they went back managing other stores. So
you had kind of backed out.
I had taken a year and a half off and let these guys
kind of run things.
And they owned it. I was going to sell it to them, the franchise, but then ended up with it back. That was fine. There again, not a bad thing. You may look at that and say, wow, Lord, what's this all about? Things are terrible. Thanks a lot. Dumping me in here. 2009, going to lose $250,000. That's what I could see. Sure enough, I was a little off, but it wasn't
it was far off.
It was pretty close, and I was a little low too. So,
oh boy, I'm a little third there.
So, anyways, like, Lord, what are you doing here? Well, it was wonderful. The growth that came from that, the lessons I learned, the things that we did, and then had these other 2 gentlemen who are just great guys. And said, okay, we're going to go about it a little bit different, but on somewhat of the same structure, and we're going to back off a little slowly, more slowly. And so we did that, and it was tremendous, absolutely wonderful.
So you helped kind of support them through the risk.
Just gave them the opportunity. Right. I'll trade you time for money.
Right. Sure.
A lot of people have time and they don't have any money. And other people have money, but they have no time.
Right.
So it's
you wanted a balance.
I wanted a balance there.
Got you.
Yeah, we got to a point where I could do that and afford to let them grow. Often in business, there's some really interesting things like, sometimes we make decisions that aren't good decisions because we can't afford that growth. Growth costs.
Right.
Structurally and personnel. And individually.
Personally, right.
Yeah,
sure.
Everything has a cost to it. Every decision involves a cost. Like, well, I always say, consider the cost. Can I afford this? Well, sometimes you can't afford for the business to grow or to allow people to grow in the sense of making, mistakes.
Right.
Because that's what happens. It's like driving. We aren't born good drivers. You learn to drive. And most people, you can have a business sense, but you're going to learn business.
Right.
Be a student of it. Don't have to be complicated. That's what I did with the auto business. I don't like cars, but I became a student of it.
Right.
And,
So now today, I can name several people who have been blessed by your counsel business-wise. So as you're telling your whole story, I hear no formal education in business. I hear no particular, method of drilling down, business concepts, etc. But you've been, even to me, I mean, goodness, we sat right here at this desk a while back, and oh boy. So obviously quite a bit of experience to impart this wisdom. Does that mostly come from experience, or is there some secret class that you took that you didn't share with us?
Become a student. I wasn't, like I said, I didn't consider myself very smart. Not that I was dumb, but I didn't have that, desire academically initially. So it's, okay, how do you know what to order? Through stages, when I sold cars, all I really cared about, that if Forrest walked in the dealership and he wanted a vehicle, that I had that vehicle he wanted out on the lot. As a salesman, that's what was my concern. Mm-hmm. And then I became the F&I manager. It's like, okay, well, my concern is that the salesman had cars that could be competitive in the market so they could sell them. So it got a little bit broader. And then I became a dealer. And so now my concern became not necessarily what every customer desired that I had on the lot, but what was my average turn, and that was the most marketable, and that could expand to more dealerships, so that maybe I don't have that customer in Fremont, Michigan, but some dealer in Grand Rapids does, and he sees that I have that car, and so he calls me and says, "Hey, Randy, I see you got that car. Can I buy it from you?" So my picture became larger and larger, right? And so I simplified. Like, my girls were into horses, and I would go to horse shows, and I would watch them a little bit, but then after so long,
they ride a horse.
Then they're riding a horse. Hopefully they're staying on, which
right.
They did most of the time. I'd go, and I would look at the trucks that were pulling the horse trailers. Oh, how are people ordering? How are they equipping their trucks that they're buying to pull their horse trailers? That's what I want to have on my lot, because we got a lot of horse people in Fremont, Michigan. And well, what do you order for your used car lot? You're going to spend $1 million, and you're going to have 60 vehicles out there, and you want to turn it. Like, it's all about turn. You want to turn that inventory. You don't want it sitting there. I'm not a collector. I buy them to sell them. How do you know what to order? I can get all kinds of information from Detroit and the franchise and all that. But like, we're in Fremont, Michigan. People don't
What are people driving?
We don't buy two-wheel drive trucks. How do you know what people are driving? Man, I'm across the street from Walmart. Randy, why don't you grab a cup of coffee and go walk the Walmart lot? They'll tell you what people are buying.
So you created Randy's school of
become a student.
Randy, and
Just be a student.
So you found opportunities for education, and over time people saw that, and so now looking back on our conversation, some of the things you shared with me, when I switched from general construction to just roofing at Redeemed, some of your conversation was in terms of educating. Well, Aaron, what are people doing? And your questions were all education type questions. And you were kind of in that mentorship process. You were asking me questions to create Aaron's school for Aaron. And because one of my thoughts as I was preparing to talk to you today was, okay, what does Randy's mentorship of other people look like? Because like I said, you don't know anything about roofing, right? You know cars because you educated yourself in cars, but you were still able to give me wise counsel in roofing, because you weren't giving me counsel about roofing. You were giving me counsel, now that I look back at it, you were giving me counsel in education and some business stuff that you'd experienced and growth, etc. But that education was to educate me on how to educate myself. So what do you got here, Randy?
Well, it's just a booklet, but I was going to say something in reference to that. It's like, I ask this question often because I just love it. It's like, okay, Randy, I got my own business. I'm doing my business. Oh, that's great, Aaron. That's great for us. How much you going to pay yourself? And how do you know how much to pay yourself?
Right.
Like, wow, I don't know. It's like, well, if I go to work and like whatever's in the checkbook, right?
Right. Nope. I can tell you the answer to that question. You have to pay yourself, as Randy McDonald says, you have to pay yourself as much as it would cost to pay somebody else to do that job. And I'm guessing that thought process came from experience. You didn't go to school or read some book that told you, ran into an experience where, oh shoot, I wasn't paying myself enough, or oh shoot, I'm paying myself too much. So,
well, and how do you determine that? Like I had a rule that I wouldn't take a wage that was 10 times more than any employee within the store. Like, I don't know where I came up with that, but that was like...
It's just your decision.
Now do something different. And not that you don't have other benefits, and not that there isn't other opportunity to invest in your business that can give you a return. Buy a building, buy a whatever it is.
But your wage from that particular business, you said...
Take care of the business.
Right.
That was the wonderful thing about partnerships. And I learned that from my partner. Like, take care of the business. Always look for the business. So become a student of the business. I left that after 30 plus years. I could not order you a car. I couldn't order it. I never was able to order a car. I did it the first dealership, second dealership, never knew how to order a car. Don't know what the packages are, really didn't. I just did not care about cars, but I cared about people.
Right.
And so that really helped. And I was really big on processes. What happens when? What happens when? What happens when Aaron and Forrest pull in my driveway? What happens? Do they know where to go? How do they know where to go? What happens when they come through? What happens when?
Right.
And so I'm really big on processes. That's a book I dragged out for you. So I would just process everything. I just ask that question. What happens when? Like, do I know? I used to tell my employees.
Contingency plan.
Well, yeah, when they come to work for me, I said, there's a few things you want to know. Like, how to get here, what time we start, when payday is, and where the exit door is. Because you might want to leave.
Right.
We don't have to make it complicated.
We don't. Just show up and sell cars, right?
Yeah.
So you've had plenty of opportunities to mentor other people because they've just seen your success in business, et cetera. But that's not, cars and business is not really where your heart is. And so now you've moved into a place where you've kind of removed yourself from the dealership, and those guys are running things, but now you are participating in a pretty heavy ministry in marriage counseling, right?
Yeah, it started out primarily marriage counseling, yes.
And you've been doing that for a while, kind of on an unofficial capacity. You've walked with couples through some stuff in the past.
Yeah.
So how did that expand into what's going on now? What's going on now?
Well, that's quite a process, and that's all part of God setting you up to really fulfill His will in your life, if you're looking for it and after it. And I guess I could say it's like typing, and I joke about this, typing. I can type, and I can type quite well. My motive for taking typing in school was because I like girls. And I figured, there's going to be a lot of girls in that
this
class.
typing class.
And you know what? I was right. And I learned how to type, and I would have never been able to do what I did in business if I couldn't type well. And it was just so funny. So, okay, the whole thing with the ministry, my heart was, what does he do? He works himself out of a job. So, and I wanted to do something. I said, Lord, if possible, could I do something to, the last chapter, whatever that looked like, that I don't have to retire from, because I don't see where retirement's in the scriptures. And not that you can't back off, but it's just not me. I don't see going south for 6 months, or I just don't see that. And I move a lot slower than I used to. That just happens. Didn't see that coming either. But anyways, it's like, can I do something, that I can just do, that I can continue to do for a long time? And I didn't think it would be this at all, at all. I wasn't for counseling, didn't really even agree with counseling. Like, suck it up, man. Life is rough. It can be brutal. That's the way it is for everybody.
Read your Bible and move on.
Get over it. You're anxious. Don't be anxious about anything, but prepare supplication with thanksgiving. Make your request made known to God. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your heart and mind. There you go.
You're all set.
You're all set. Don't be anxious. Move on. And like, so that was me. But yet I counseled, Bess says I counseled people a lot in the dealership just over time. And I think over time, as I reflect on that, that's probably, true. And people helped me, counseled me. So it was something that I enjoyed because I enjoy people. I love the story. Like, what's going on? Why do people do what they do? That was always a big thing to me. I had it written down. Why do people do what they do? That's part of who. Maybe I was trying to just figure out myself. And so why do we do what we do? Anyways, so the Lord says, okay, well, we got this going on. And marriages, I had a special heart for marriages because of my experience, saw the mess that it made with my family, through a divorce. Nobody's fault. I'm not trying to blame anybody. My dad, I love my dad, love my mom. They did the best they could. I told them so. I have no issue with that at all. They didn't set out to hurt it. It's just like, it wasn't, I'm not going to blame them because they couldn't do what we think. I just don't go there. It doesn't matter. I truly felt that way, had no animosity towards them whatsoever, but it did make it a little bit tough on the kids, right?
Sure,
and God says, I want godly
stats all over the place.
Yeah, I want godly parents because I want godly kids. That's what he says. I want godly kids because, godly kids will become godly parents who have godly kids, and that's how we keep it going. So I had a real passion for that. Run across the Insight Alpha Women's Center years ago, and they had a fundraiser, met, hooked up with a gentleman there that was wonderful, was into marriages, thought, hey, we got a big place out north of town. Would you like to do a little conference or something maybe for marriages? Oh, yeah, he was from Chicago. Maybe I'd like to. He says, well, let's talk. So we talked, and we did, and we had he says, I'll do some training. So, okay, so he come. And 2016, before couples came, he trained for a weekend. That was good. I tried to implement a little bit of that, and that was okay. That was cool. But just because I'm fighting for the family, man. That's my thing,
Absolutely.
I don't have to counsel. Sometimes that counseling it can be tough. And so that's not my goal. It's not that I want to counsel. It's like, no, I want to try to hold the family together, help people have this freedom in Christ that Jesus says he came to give us, and many, many, many have not experienced it because they're still carrying the shame.
And so you carried that concept of educate yourself into the marriage counseling world. And so you did some formal training, right?
Yes, quite a bit of formal training later on.
But you also looked at successful marriages that you had seen and built some of that, and took your cup of coffee across the street to Walmart and looked at all the cars in the lot in terms of marriage. But then you did get some formal training. Yep. And so now you have a ministry where you are counseling couples on a pretty regular basis, kind of an intensive. And so I want to give you an opportunity to kind of plug that ministry there. Talk to us about that ministry and what specifically you do there.
So what's going on is God has developed this. We were going to head to Colorado to see some niece and a nephew, and this gentleman from Chicago said, if you're going to Colorado, you got to go out and see this gentleman that started this. And said, okay, so what's that mean? So we ended up going out there and watching him counsel a couple, and that was pretty unique because I saw some pretty tough stuff, brutal stuff. People got pain,
And he didn't just read them a scripture and say you're all set.
No. He just cared about their heart. So anyways, and he offered to me, there again, God saying, Randy, here's a man that I've let you cross paths with. Like I had to go out to Colorado to cross paths with this fine gentleman. And he said, you know what? I'll invest in you, Randy, if you have an interest in this. And I had the time, and I had the freedom, and I had the resources. And this man, after 30 years, plus his ministry of 24, so 54 years of godly pursuing, helping people and caring about them and offering them what Jesus has said to me, Randy, I'll share this with you. Like, why wouldn't I? Why wouldn't I? That's what I love. I don't quite understand it, but anyway, so I did.
Do you think that you would have been able to pursue that opportunity if you hadn't been so successful in business financially?
No way, because I needed the resources to do it. So God gave me the finances to be able to do that.
Okay.
So I did that. And got the training. It was a very extensive, very hard, took quite a while, and have pursued that, and then started offering up to meeting with people, and so we've done that quite a bit, and then that kind of developed a little bit into, which has been very interesting. I still have people and counseling someone right now with business. And so normally I get a call, say, Randy, we'd like some help with succession planning. And that's code word for we're not getting along. I've learned that. It's like, and so, okay, yeah, come on in. I'm like, whoa, man, this is a mess. And so the counseling has been great in that. So we're doing, the counseling and the business aspect. God has given that opportunity, and working with couples and trying to do that. So that's what the Lord has presented.
So now, is that kind of an official ministry? Or is it just people that know that you do this send people to you? And
that's it. I didn't even.
So it's not a Randy and Beth's marital counseling.com kind of.
No, not really. I mean, we've been kind of pushed in that, but I'm not a 501c3. Could be. Just don't want to get tied up with the governmental baloney.
Yeah, right.
So,
right.
And people are so generous. They help with the resources, because I buy a lot of resources and give them to people. And we just care about people and let them come in and hear their story and open up the scriptures and bring them to Jesus. And so we've had to make cards, because I've done quite a bit of speaking, and I've had that opportunity, which is great, various places. And so we do that, and I have the card, and going to have a conference the end of April. And so, I just take it a day at a time, a step at a time, and see where the Lord leads.
Somebody's listening and they're like, man, either I'm struggling in my marriage, or I know somebody who's struggling in their marriage, or I know somebody who's struggling in their business, and they'd like some help. How can they connect with you? What can we'll post it on social media, and we'll
sure.
Is there a website?
I can give you the card. I can give you the card
on how to contact,
and it doesn't even have to be if you're struggling. Like, really, my desire was I'd like to help keep healthy marriages healthy. Right?
Okay,
and healthy businesses healthy.
Right.
Let's not wait until we get to where we're,
the last resort. Or
right. Man, we've got
the divorce attorneys already been called.
You're our last chance. Like, at least now I can say we tried everything. Right. Like, oh man, it's like, don't cut the juggler. Let's come to me when we got a little abrasion.
A little something.
Yeah, just a little abrasion. We'll get that healed up fast.
You wait till that sucker's infected with gangrene. I'm not a big fan of amputations, right?
First we got to dice it open again. Like, that's painful. So it's all good. God is
you'll
good.
you'll get us that contact info on how to get a hold of you.
Happy to.
And I don't know how big. I mean, obviously, it'd be great that this podcast would bless a lot of people. So obviously, if it blew, I wouldn't want you to be overwhelmed with stuff. But we will, if that's all right with you. Post that when we post this. And you said at the end of April, there's a conference.
Yes,
here locally, West
24, 25,
okay.
April.
We'll put
Sunday,
that.
Monday, Tuesday night. Yes,
and that's marriage specific.
No.
What is that?
It's general.
Just general personal
couples, personal, whatever.
Healing and growth kind of.
This gentleman's going to come. It's basically, we're going to talk about biblical, emotional, and spiritual health.
Biblical, emotional, and spiritual health. Is it? You got a name for this conference or something that we can?
No, not really.
No, we'll get some. We'll get some info. We'll post it on social media as far as this conference is concerned.
That.
It's in West Michigan.
Yep, limited
registration.
Yeah.
We will check before we post it and make sure there are still seats available before we post it.
Okay.
So
we can talk.
We can talk about that later. But and then this last section of the podcast, Randy, we've kind of titled Proverbs 32. So let's say you were tasked with writing Proverbs 32 and some wisdom. And there's two people that we're talking about. I'm going to shift back to business now. Two people that we're looking to talk to. And one is the guy who is new to the faith, but he's a business owner. And so he's trying to kind of figure out how to navigate, well, how does that play out in my business dealings? And how does it play out in the way I run the business different than I used to? And then the second guy is somebody who is a believer and loves Jesus and is walking with God and feels led to start his own business. And so he's either starting or started. And talk to me about, and I'm wondering if you touch on the education piece, give us a quick, a couple of verses of Proverbs 32 that would bless these two people that I'm talking about.
Well, give me a little more segue to that and what you're thinking, will you?
Yeah. Just a couple of nuggets from what we've talked about. Kind of wrap it up, put a bow on it as far as if you had one or two things that you could say to a guy, always this or keep this in mind or something.
Well, as a Christian, start your day every day with Scripture.
Whether you're in business or not.
Every day. God says it's a living word. There's something different about Scripture than any other book I read, and I read a lot. Because it is living and active. And it helps you get the right mindset. It helps get and there was a time when I would read a verse. Like a verse. That may be all I read all day. A verse. If that's all you have time for, make sure read a verse. Business. Be about God's business. And his business is to invest in people. That's what he does.
Invest in people.
Invest in people.
And that's
I don't care if you're making widgets, you're selling rice, putting on roofs, selling it doesn't matter. Care about people. They're God's creation.
Well, Randy, I just want to thank you for your time and the scheduling snafu here and location. I really appreciate it. I appreciate your story. I think a lot of people are going to be blessed by your story and is on your ministry. Definitely praying for you. We'd encourage you to pray for the ministry that Randy's got going on with counseling, etc. And we always do thank you for listening to a Christian Business Podcast, and we hope to talk again soon. Thanks, Randy.
Thank you.